Hey everyone, and welcome back to Jewelry Sales Training. My name is Stephanie Bosch, and I would like to talk with you today about sales scripts. And the reason why is that I get asked about sales script, but also I think for loads of people who have not been in sales or haven't worked in sales, there is this assumption that a sales script would solve all your problems and it will just like be the magic kind of formula that will easy peasy like this sell all your stock or sell whatever you want to sell, right? And I think one of the big problems is that sales trainers are often people who are like gurus. Like, I just want to make sure they are like self-proclaimed gurus pretty often, who have maybe never ever sold shit in their life, promise you the world by wanting you to buy their script or their copywriting course, etc. And I would like to talk with you about sales scripts and when they can be beneficial. And I'm not saying this is like evil stuff or this is good. I will give you a bit more differentiated look on sales scripts. So when does it make sense? For whom does it make sense? And under which conditions? Because I've been selling for a really long time. I started working in sales back in 2006. And I've worked in different industries. I work in banking with private clients. I worked in management consulting with corporate clients. I worked in recruitment where I would obviously be responsible for candidates. So the people who are looking for a job, as well as the customers who wanted to place someone on the role. So B2B as well as B2C. I worked obviously as well in jewelry sales where I sold jewelry to customers for a small brand and for a very well-known brand. And I'm running a business. Well, I'm actually running two businesses since 4 years. I also been professionally trained several times with different companies where we learn different techniques because, as you can imagine, there's different things to keep in mind, different processes, and sales is a skill that needs to be learned, that needs to be worked on, and that needs to be done. You need to practice this in order to get better. If you have seen in different industries, if you worked in different industries, it gets difficult to say black and white, this is good, this is bad, because quite often the answer simply has to be, it depends. And so, sales script, for those of you who don't know what it is, a sales script is usually message or your message you would like to send written out. So you're more or less just grabbing a piece of paper, writing down whatever you're going to say, and then you read it out loud to the customer. For example, when it gets a bit difficult, obviously, in face-to-face, but there's ways, obviously, to learn what to say, etc. But yeah, pretty often it's been used in like cold calling when you are picking up the phone and you're starting to say your first sentence. So you're just reading it out. And I think this is where it starts. I mean, if you have seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, he is like the new one with Leonardo DiCaprio. He is telling people how to sell anything to everyone. And I mean, obviously in NLP, like neuro-linguistic programming, we also have like these kind of phrases that you can use. There's obviously sometimes helpful like words to make your language sound more luxurious. Things to to just enhance your product, benefits, you should say, etc. So there are things that make sense obviously to state, but a sales script would be you're learning literally what to say. So you're often taking someone else's language and words and how they would say things and study this. And this is like the biggest problem already I have with sales scripts, because we are all very, very different. You are very different to me, and you're very different to your colleague. And this is great because this is how we can sell differently and also appeal to different people. And it doesn't mean only because I have a preference to communicate in one way, it doesn't mean we can't adjust our communication styles, which we should because it makes a lot of sense. But with a sales script, we are kind of like forced to say what we are saying. So we are kind of like stuck with the message. And often if we do this, it completely becomes inauthentic. We sound like a fraud, and we also don't really believe what we're saying because it's not necessarily our words. We're not really comfortable with how we say things, because if this is not naturally for you to say, it gets really difficult. So one solution obviously would be to write the sales scripts at least yourself, so that the overall message, again, like, it makes sense to practice certain responses and to practice certain arguments and to practice knowing your benefits of a product, the features of a product, etc., so that you don't have to think about it all the time but really know your stuff. However, you want to state these things in a way that is natural to you, because otherwise there would be dissonance with your customer in the communication with your customer. And often people don't buy for rational reasons, but also obviously because of the feelings they get. And if I feel that something is off, and I don't know what it is, but if, just this feeling of something is off, then I'm not going to purchase from this person, because I get uncomfortable, and this will happen to loads of people. So sales scripts can obviously help you to say the right thing or say the right thing, but often if they are written out for you and they are not customized to your customer, to yourself, etc., they can sound really off, they can sound really weird, and they can become very unnatural for you in the selling process. Another thing is also to keep in mind that if you read something out, you sound often very different to speaking normally, so to speaking free, simply because we sound a bit more monotone and we are reading out a script. Another thing is if you say a word maybe wrong, or you miss a bit of the sentence, or whatever, things can happen when we get nervous, then you might be like, oh gosh, I said the wrong thing, and then you're focusing on your script, you're not focusing on your customer, you keep focusing on your script, and you're getting more and more nervous, and it's very easy to mess it up, despite thinking we are no longer able to messing things up if we have a sales script. So it's kind of a bit of a paradox, I guess. When do I think sales scripts can make sense, though? So I only ever worked once with a sales script, and this was when I was trained to cold call when I worked in recruitment. And cold calling companies, if you have never ever done this is a different level of selling, because often, if we sell jewelry, or if we sell anything where people come to us and want something, so for example, if they come to the jewelry shop, then they are already in your house, you have the customer face to face, or if they contact you online, it's a very different way of selling than if you pick up the phone, cold call companies, and try to sell their products, or try to figure out whether they are in need of you to work with them. You try to get their attention, you're competing with all the other people doing this. So it's a different thing, right? And if you have never ever done this, it can make sense to have a script to just remember your name. I mean, it sounds probably really stupid, but when you're really under pressure, the first time a customer picks up and is not slamming down the phone, you might be like, oh my God, struggling. What am I actually going to say? How do I open up the conversation? So scripting out the first few sentences might make sense at the beginning, because also you want to address immediately the customer's concerns, or like the potential prospect's concerns. So for example, saying who's calling, how long it will take, that it's safe for them to talk to you, because I mean, obviously there's also loads of spams going on, there's loads of fake going on, etc. So you want to break the ice with this person, because it's a bit like dating, right? It would be similar to walking up on the tube or on the metro, wherever you are, what it's called, like in the underground. If you would walk up to someone and ask them out for a date. We all know, I think, that this is pretty tough, and it's kind of similar with like picking up the phone. And this is, I think, also why so few people do cold calling, because it's scary, and also the mind talk you have and before you actually pick up the phone. It's probably the scariest thing, because I feel like this often gets in the way of us just simply doing it and going through our list, etc. So this is when it might make sense to script out what you're going to say, so that you just get the entrance right and get it smooth until you are more comfortable and know what you're actually doing. But, and I mean, sorry, but there's obviously a but. So little like story time, what happened when I did this. My boss, who trained me back then, and this was like in like part of their interview process, so it was like you're working a half day for free to see whether I would like the job, whether they think I can do it, whether I would fit the team, etc. So I wasn't really yet on the team, and I mean, obviously we can talk about these interviewing techniques, whether they are helpful or not. But anyway, so I was not professionally trained on what I'm actually doing, what I'm selling, etc. And she wanted to see whether I'm capable of picking up the phone and doing cold calling, because I've never done it before, despite having like obviously quite a lot of sales experience already. But it's, again, a very different process, and recruitment is very different to what I've done before. And so she told me like what to say, but I think she didn't really expect someone to talk to me. And well, the person did. Like, obviously lots of people hung up the phone or didn't even pick it up, which happens when you cold call quite a lot. You know, you dial a number, especially if it's lunchtime or if there are meetings, and no one will pick up. So it can be surprising if someone does. So obviously someone picked up, and I talked to this person. Okay, it sounds a bit ridiculous, I'm sorry. But yeah, anyway, so I talked to this person and I said who I am and what I was talking about, etc. And I made a quick proposal stating my service and asking whether they would generally consider working with a recruitment agency. And he said, yeah. Then he asked me to tell me a bit more about the services we can offer and the candidates that would be a good fit. And obviously this is where I completely lost it, because yeah, I wasn't trained, so I didn't even know how to take on a job properly, like when you go through the list of what the customer is actually looking for, what the client is actually looking for, etc. So I was a bit lost, and it was a bit embarrassing, to be fair. Again, we can talk about interview stories, like whether this made sense or not, or whether it could have been done better. But anyway, but this is one of the major risks when you use scripts. And I mean, it happened to me, but it can easily happen to you too. Not obviously in the same manner, because you're not selling recruitment services, you are selling jewelry if you're here. But it's something where, you know, if you have a script, you kind of expect the customer to go with your flow. So with a script, you usually expect customer reactions, and then you would have already scripted out your answers to their questions or to their objections on why they can't buy, etc. However, if the customer gets you off track or gets you off script in this sense, then easily it can lead into a panic kind of state. So for me, the answer needs to be there is a certain time when sales scripts can make sense to help you get more comfortable at the beginning, maybe. But I highly, highly, highly recommend getting rid of them when you can. So do not stick to your script and think you need to, this is the only way to sell, because it's clearly not. And yes, there's obviously a big difference between a process and an argumentation, or building a proper argument, and a script, right? I mean, I'm really talking about someone is scripting out for you what you say, word for word for word. So I'm not a big fan of these. I don't think they are good, because this has nothing to do with like sales skills or learning how to sell. And, you know, to me, I'm not about learning skills that help you to manipulate others into something that is not useful for them, into something they don't want and that is a bit dodgy. So this is not what I'm teaching, and if it is something you're looking for, how to scam people, right, then you're on the wrong channel, because this is clearly not what I'm doing. But if you need to use, you know, script in order like to get more comfortable right at the beginning of your career, or if you're just starting out in sales, it might help you to get more comfortable, or when you're doing some practice in order to get ready for like the real thing, right? So then it might make sense to help you practice, or like for role play, to practice with a colleague or someone else. However, I would advise you to write the script yourself, so that it is within a communication style that fits you and that is comfortable for you to use, because otherwise you will most likely sound like someone who's reading out a script, who you won't be able to build trust, you won't be able to build rapport if you do so. And you know what, it just kind of like ruins your reputation, because this is embarrassing for you and for the customer to be like, oh my God, I'm talking to an amateur. And so the customer really wants to get out of it. So I'm really not a fan of sales script. And yes, this is way harder work, but I truly believe that it makes more sense to understand how to sell, to understand your products, to understand the benefits, to understand your customers, and then have a proper conversation, human to human, with your customer and sell, obviously, rather than just depending on a piece of paper. I hope you found this helpful, and if you have any other topics you would like to get covered, please feel free to drop me a message, and also please feel free to join our Facebook group. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.